Learning occurs in many ways: reading, writing, observing, and doing. Montgomery College's access to history is for the doers. Our guests have participated in actions or events that we now recognize as part of history. In the studio, they sit down, mic up, and have conversations with faculty and students from Montgomery College. There is no host, no flashy set, and no commercials, just people and their stories. Sometimes the stories date back many years, and sometimes the story is current. It's all historical, and it's part of Montgomery College's access to history.
It was a long time ago, but it really happened, and I remember all of it. I landed on Utah Beach on Normandy and went on to fight the Battle of the Bulge. I was a Jewish soldier in the U.S. Army battling Hitler's Nazis. I was there when we liberated Dachau. I'm Herman Zeitchik. This is my story.
Mr. Zeitchik, tell me where you grew up.
I grew up in New Jersey.
And when it was time for you to join the military, did you actually join or were you drafted?
No. Here's what happened. President Roosevelt was president at the time, Franklin D., and they passed a law that all boys 18 of age have to go to the local post office and register.
And so you registered when you were 18 years old?
18 years old.
And did you feel patriotic? Did you feel nervous? Did you feel a combination of both?
No, I felt very good because I felt like it was very important.
And all your friends were, I guess, around the same age and doing that as well?
Same age, yes. We all registered.
And eventually your number was called.
My number was called and I had a report.
And what was your job in the military?
In the military? Well, first I went to Fort Dix in my plain clothes. And you can imagine having your mother and father say goodbye to you. Going to the Army was a big thing. They were smarter than I was. And they were frightened. But it's either go report or you go to jail. And they took us to Fort Dix. At Fort Dix, we got off the bus and lined up. And the first thing they did was issue uniforms. So you had to take your clothing, your new clothing, shirts, trousers, whatever they had to wear, and take it with you and hold it. But you're still wearing your old clothing. Then they took you to a barracks that you were going to stay in. You showered, put the new clothing on, and they gave you boxes to put your old clothing in, and you had to send it home.
Wow.
And that was a bad thing, too. But
did you feel kind of nervous or scared once that was going on?
No, I felt very good because we were all doing the same thing.
And eventually you were given a job. You were trained to do a certain job.
Here's the way they did it. The Army brings you and puts the uniform on you. Now you have to fill out papers to see how you qualify. Some people were good at cooking, some were mechanics, some were typists, which I was. I played in the band. I played the clarinet and saxophone, and my fingers were fast when you use that kind of instrument. And I took typing, and I got a certificate for 85 words a minute, which was very good. That's good typing.
That's really good typing.
Yeah. And after that, we went back and we got orders we started to separate. They were sending some of the people to, like I said, butcher school, cooking, mechanics, and they sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. At Fort Bragg, they taught me how to work with a 105 howitzer.
What is that?
It's a big gun, real big gun. And work with maps and work with the radio and learned how to drive vehicles because everybody had to be trained. If you're going to drive a vehicle, Jeep, quarter-ton, half-ton truck, you have to know how to do it and take care of it, just like it was your right arm. I did that for 17 weeks.
And when did you get the order to go overseas?
After the 17 weeks of training, the entire group knew they had to pack up and get ready to leave. We boarded trains and left for Fort Dix first. I thought after getting into Fort Dix, I recognized it. I knew. I said, my God, we're going to be stationed in Fort Dix. No such luck. The train was still on the tracks, and there was an armed guard on the front and one on the back, so nobody can get off. It was just a temporary holdover. And from there, they moved us to a port for embarkation.
Eventually, you end up in London.
Eventually, we wound up in Europe. We crossed the ocean. The ship was loaded with soldiers. And we crossed the Atlantic in storms. We still didn't know where we were going. We didn't know where we were going. And finally, we wound up in England.
And you were, at this time, barely 20, not even quite? You were very young.
Very young and still not a soldier. Of course, I was wearing a uniform, didn't mean much. When they put you into a unit that's going to do the fighting, they have to have extra personnel in case somebody gets killed. Somebody has to fill those slots immediately. I was one of the replacements, which was good, and I didn't know where I was going to go. And finally, I wound up in an artillery unit, and which was very good because we were not frontline men. The infantry was a front line. And we trained there till the invasion.
I'm tempted to ask you again, knowing all of that, if you were scared, just sort of knowing what was coming, or did you have any idea of what to expect?
Of course, when you're in training, you crawl on the ground. They have machine guns firing bullets over your head, and they tell you don't stand up, so you have to crawl on the ground. And you have to practice shooting, and there's a lot of different things that in the training process of making you a soldier.
In the weeks leading up to that, you actually saw General Eisenhower.
Yes. Not only General Eisenhower, I saw Winston Churchill. And to me, that was a big thing. And of course, London, there was thousands of people living in London, but there's also thousands of troops there. And I always said, what kept England up without falling into the ocean? Because there was so many people there. But, nothing happened except the V-1 rocket that the Germans were shooting into England from France. And these rockets would go across the English Channel, and then stop. The motor would stop, and the bomb would fall. So there was it did a lot of damage. But the English were already at war quite a long time before we got there. So they knew how to handle it, and they knew to go to shelters. They knew at nighttime to keep the shades down so no lights be seen. And there was also a lot of German spies in London that knew what was happening, that reported to Germany. Everything was top secret. We would have rehearsal, pack up, load the trucks, and get ready to go. And everybody would put their clothing together and put it in trucks that they were assigned to and get ready to go. And they'd blow the whistle, cancel.
Oh.
Well, that went on for a few weeks. In the headquarters, you can't pack everything up like that. There's too many papers that you have to account for. Something was in the air because these practice loading and unloading was coming too close to each other. And of course I said nothing. You didn't have many friends because a lot of the Third Corps soldiers that I was with were from Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina. These are men, not too many young boys like myself. These were men who never worked, and they joined the Army. And they never wore shoes. And if they did, they were tied together and they wore it around their neck. Anyway, the night of June the 4th and the 5th, there was a lot of stirring going on in the headquarters. I just kept busy doing what I had to do, putting things in boxes. But the night of 5th, I heard these B-17s going overhead. And it was storming. It was raining. London got a lot of rain. But it was really raining that night. And I said, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. And they pulled this signal for loading. You know, when you do something too much and nothing happens, you just stop doing it.
Right.
What I did was when I heard everything, the B-17s and the gliders going overhead, of course, it was very low. I got my things together, and the order came to load up, and this was for real. And I was at Barmouth. That's a seaport. Our ship came in. The ships were there at Barmouth, and the factories along the loading zone, and the women, girls, men were waving to us because they can see soldiers with their packs.
Even at this point, though, I'm guessing you didn't maybe know exactly what you were going into. There was no way to know.
Didn't know. And then we boarded the ship, and everybody got orders not to come above deck until the ship was clear of the port. So everybody had to be below deck. And when you're on a ship like that, they sleep 6 high. And mine was on the top. So I had to climb out on the top. I didn't mind that. That was good because you didn't get the smell of their feet. Be surprised how many people don't bathe. And clothing. And we were out. The ship was out a port. And they gave the okay that you can come above deck. But you got to remember, the English Channel, there was a lot of German submarines. And these submarines did hit a few ships. And we were just lucky that we made it all right.
And you made it to Utah Beach in the morning?
In the morning.
In the next morning.
That's right.
Well, what did you see and what happened when you got there?
Well, here's what happened. The Germans thought the invasion was going to be from Calais. Where Calais is, it's north. And that's the closest port to England. 23 miles. That's all it is. Wrong. We came further south, and we came into the Utah area. Omaha was cliffs, but Utah, the land came down so that Utah was safe, a safe area. Again, a lucky break for me. They dropped these nets on the side of the ship, and because of the channel was choppy of the rain, so the ship was doing this.
You were supposed to climb from those nets.
Climb down the nets into a smaller ship, a smaller boat that would take you ashore. And I think it held maybe 60 or 70 men. They were the Higgins boats. And the sailors gave us instructions, just keep your head down, don't look out, we're going to handle the boat. And when we dropped the front of the ship, the boat, the Higgins boat, as fast as you can, scurry onto the beach.
And when they said as fast as you can, it literally meant life or death.
That's right. Some beaches have a sandbar that you can walk out and it comes up to your waist, and then suddenly it comes up, there's a sandbar. Some of the Higgins boats didn't make it to the beach. The sailors hit the sandbar, and they thought that was the beach area. And the front of the ship, the Higgins boat, went down. When they started to run off the beach, thinking it was the beach, they first hit deep water. And with all that weight on their shoulders, they drowned. So we lost a lot of men on the initial invasion.
Just in that transferring, just getting out of the boat.
Yes. You couldn't tell where the sandbar was. But our ship hit the really beach, and we scurried up the beach. And the engineers were there before us, and they marked it off with white markers, not to go on it right or left of the white markers, just stay in that and get off the beach as fast as you can.
And what was your job to do once you got to so-called
there was so many of us soldiers there, you had to look for your unit that you were attached to, your family. You had to look for them. As we were scurrying up the beach, there was General Roosevelt with his cane. Next to it, the beach had a lot of little white cottages, houses there that people owned, that used the beach. But he was standing right next to it, and the soldiers were crawling up the sand to get off the beach. And he was yelling, "Come on, get up, so you can stand up now." And I said, "Who's that crazy man standing up there giving them orders?" I didn't know he was a general or who he was. I thought he was insane to be standing there. And the Germans, you didn't have to aim. All you had to do is point the gun in the direction. They would hit somebody. So we lost 5,000 boys that morning of the invasion.
It must have been incredibly, as I'm listening to you tell this, incredibly chaotic. Like, getting off the boat is tough. Finding your family is tough. It must have been...
You said it right.
Just a total chaos.
Well, finally I found a couple of boys, and little by little we found each other, and we just stayed together.
How long were you on the beach? Was it just that morning? Did it go on for a couple of days?
No. we got off the beach as fast as we can because there's others coming behind us. Once your unit got together, then you moved on.
Did you know then, just given how chaotic it was, what an intense day it would be and how much life would be lost? Or
No.
It was just too crazy to tell?
You couldn't tell. You couldn't tell. I mean, I can just picture exactly what was happening. You see, the Germans build these pillboxes out of concrete, thick concrete, and they were inside these pillboxes, shooting down at you with machine guns. And they knew that they can cover a certain area with those machine guns, just keep them working. So we lost a lot of GIs there. And of course, when one fell, they would yell for medic, medic, medic. Try to get somebody from the medical team there. But we finally got off the beach.
Forgive me for asking, but did you have to fire your weapon that day?
Beg your pardon?
Did you have to fire your own weapon?
No, because I was given a brand new pistol and a brand new carbine. And that was, a carbine is a gun that you put a clip into it and it fires quite a few rounds. And it was full of grease. So I was wiping it continuously to get that grease off so it could be fired.
I think a lot of people wonder about, since we've all seen this in movies, not in real life, what those few days were like. Like, how did you get to eat, and did you get to take a shower, and how did you survive?
Good question. Your backpack carried everything. It carried your toothbrush. It carried sea rations. Now, the sea rations, good question. Sea rations, 3 cigarettes, usually Lucky Strikes. I think Lucky Strikes. Chocolate bar, a can of crackers. Everything was in a can, the crackers. It was either corned beef or Spam, which was a big thing. I ate enough Spam that we eventually got our trucks that had the cooking facilities, kitchen trucks. The chefs finally made it off the ship and they brought them there. So there was no problem with that. But I never smoked or drank. I never did that. So I used to save my cigarettes and I'd trade them for something else.
Mm. Now, just moving forward a little bit, a few months go by and then you're involved in another battle, another famous battle, Battle of the Bulge.
Yes. First one was the Herman Forest. Now that's a big forest and tall trees. And the Germans were shooting their 88s. That's a gun big as that 105 howitzer. And all they do is have to hit the top of the trees. It explodes. And all those branches will fall down on you. So you can get hurt that way.
Were you actually kind of living in the forest?
We were living in the forest.
Outside, in a tent?
Well, we had the trucks. We had the trucks in there. So what we did was they blew up some trees and made paths so the trucks can go by. But there was so much vehicles using the paths that the snow turned to mud. So we were constantly using tanks to pull out these trucks. It was unbearable.
While you were kind of living in the forest, were you able to write letters home? How did you survive?
People slept in their trucks because they had to have not only the trucks, they cut trees down. and made shelters so that nothing would fall on them when the Germans would shoot at the trees. But the Germans never came into the Hurtgen Forest. And after I read a lot of different articles and books, we should not have even been in the Hurtgen Forest. But we were there, so you just had to do the best. It was the worst winter Europe had. And from there, we went to the Battle of the Bulge. Now, that happened. In order to win this war, the Germans, they had to separate the Americans. So here we are, all these Americans on this line, and they were trying to break a path, separate us. We wouldn't let them. On our side was the fuel tanks that the Germans needed. They were running out of gas and oil for their tanks. And that was the Battle of the Bulge. Being in the artillery, we were a little further back, and the infantry boys were the 8th and the 12th that we gave fire to, or any other unit that we had an observer with, because the observer had to be with the artillery, with the infantry people. And my job was to give maps to them. And these maps showed different numbers, north and south, east and west. And when we saw something that we wanted to shoot at, we would check the numbers where they were on the map, radio that back, and have one howitzer shoot into that area. And if it hit close enough, he said, good, fire for effect. So we had all Abel, Baker, and Charlie batteries shoot their guns into that area, and we knocked it out. The system was perfect.
You had another little system for communicating with other soldiers involving clicking.
Clicking, okay.
Yeah. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. The Germans, what they did was they put white sheets over their uniforms so they would blend in with the snow. We didn't have white sheets. So nighttime, when things quieted down, we had to check with one another, which we always did. We had a clicker. This is a clicker. You couldn't say, hey, Joe, hey, Charles, hey, Jimmy, you okay? Because we always had to check with each other. So what we did was we gave one click. And it does sound like a...
Kind of like a cricket.
Cricket, yes. But we changed it. Sometimes it was 2 clicks, answer, 3 clicks, answer. We didn't have to say their name. But the Germans never knew that. And if they answered, you shot in that direction. So in the morning, you either found a dead cow or you found a dead German soldier.
Wow. Wow.
So these clickers really worked. The Germans were bad people. They were taught bad. They were just bad in general. That's the worst word I can use. Very, very bad. We finished with one problem, and the Normandy problem comes up. Now, I've been reading a lot about the Normandy, and they're trying to say some of the American officers didn't follow directions, but who would take a prisoner with their hands up like this in the snow, in the cold, and move them into a field and machine gun them?
So they were essentially saying, we surrender, and they
surrendered.
Were killed anyway.
They surrendered. We captured German prisoners. We brought them back. We fed them. We gave them clothing. We put them on boats. We sent them back to New Jersey. I'm telling you, this really happened. Where we have the chicken farms, tremendous chicken farms in New Jersey that I happen to know about. And they worked on the farms because we were growing things. We had no men. They were all in the army. And after the war, these Germans didn't want to go back home because they liked it here. So it was a...
You also saw some other scary things while you were there, and one of those things was a concentration camp that you came across.
Yes. I didn't know that this camp was there. We came to the camp, and I see these people with the striped uniforms. I didn't understand. I really didn't understand because nobody in headquarters talked about it. And I went in, I talked to these people. Some didn't go out because we already freed them. They were afraid to go out of the camp. You know, mind-wise, they were frightened that they would get killed, even though there was no Germans there. But finally, little by little, they did take them out or took them to hospitals. And this one man, I wanted to give him something, so I thought of the Bible, and I gave him the Bible, but it was in English. He probably couldn't even read it. I didn't even think about it.
And your name is in the Bible.
And my name is in it, my mother's name and address. And all these years, these 69, 70 years, I thought somebody would write. That Bible is floating around Europe someplace. That person is probably dead now. But somebody must have found it.
Wow.
But we were on patrol. And when I say we were on patrol, 2 or 3 of us, we were near Strasbourg, Germany, and it's mountainous and a lot of caves. As a matter of fact, there's a book out and a movie made called The Monument Man. They had these bottles of cognac and champagne, and they were drinking and walking down on this path. So we said, "Where'd you get it?" "Help yourself. There's a cave there. Help yourself." Well, we finally found the cave. We went in, and inside there was boxes of art, silver, cognac. And I said, "This is no good." Being in headquarters, I got to notify them because it's going to be a big problem. So we told headquarters, and they sent trucks there and took all this out, and it went someplace. But the GIs were told that they could not take anything German. They could not take anything German. They cannot steal anything. We're not there to steal. Anything military you can take, but don't send it in the mail. What the boys were doing, they found German shells, and they were putting them in boxes and mailing them. Well, if that explodes, it can kill people. So we got orders that no more. What happened, when you wrap something up, you got to put the contents inside, on the outside, so that they didn't have to inspect it. Another thing is, referring to that, all mail was censored. All mail was censored. So somebody was reading my mail that I was sending home. But I never sent anything that I had to worry about, so I didn't have a problem. But they did cut out a lot of words.
When you were writing letters back home, you were writing to your mom and dad? You were writing to your girlfriend? Who did you write letters to?
Just my family. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a girlfriend.
I'm just thinking of all the experiences that you had. You were in this incredibly chaotic time. Everything, your senses must have, you're kind of on alert all the time. You were living in very dangerous times. You were away from home. You were young. And then you sort of came home to more of a mundane sort of life. And I guess I'm curious about your transition out of war back into a more civilian life.
That was easy. That was easy because there was a lot of work to be done. Everybody got a job. My mother wanted me to go to continue school. I didn't do it because I said, look, everybody's out there making a lot of money. And in the Army, we made $57 a month. Hardly smoking money. I work now. When they bring the veterans in to Washington to see the World War II memorial, I promised them I'd be back receiving them. So I did speak to the people, and they said, well, what would my job be? Herman, we just want you there as a member of World War II.
It's amazing to hear your story and to thank you for your service. But before we end, I just wanted to ask you if you could tell me about the poem that you carry with you.
It's a poem that my father wrote. He sent me. At first, the words were beautiful, but I couldn't picture my father writing something like that. Where he got it, I don't know.
You've been carrying that poem for how many years?
70 years.
Mm-hmm. It must have been very special to you.
Very special. And very moving and beautiful. You should hear it.
Mr. Zeitchik, thank you for telling me your story.
It's a pleasure being here. You're a nice lady. And I want to thank you and the school for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My dearest son, I wish I had the power to write the feelings in my heart tonight. As with my eyes upon a star, I wonder where and how you are. You know, son, it's a funny thing how close a war like this can bring a family who for years with pride kept deep emotions far inside. I'm sorry now that when you were small, I let reserve build up a wall. I told you how real men never cried, and it was Mom, not I, who dried your tears and smoothed the hurt away and sent you laughing back to play. That kind of pride I once felt right won't fit the way I feel tonight. These eyes of mine will not stay dry. I find that sometimes men do cry, and if we stood here face to face, I think I'd find that men embrace. Son, fathers are a funny lot, and if I failed you in some spot, it's not because I love you less. It's just this so-called manliness. Now, if I had the power to write the feelings in my heart tonight, these words would stand out bright and true. I'm proud, my son, so proud of you. Love, Dad.